trying to fix my emotionally unavailable partner was just simply another distraction for me, like over-consuming self-help material, always obsessing about what's going on in terms of your relationship with him. That was just another distraction from the real issue, and the real issue was what was going on with me. This is a video for all the women out there that keep finding themselves in relationships where they're trying to fix their partner and that their partner is emotionally unavailable. There is an unhealthy or maybe toxic dynamic between the two of you. And this is a pattern for you, right? You tend to always find yourself in relationships where you're in the fixer role, in the caretaker role. I want to talk about my experience here because I think it's going to give you a really good insight into what is actually going on in these patterns and what you need to do about it. So I've always found myself in careers around a helping role. I used to be a teacher. I'm teaching now on this YouTube channel. I love to look after my family. I love to look after my friends. I have that kind of natural fixing or caretaking energy about me. And people come to me with problems like emotional problems, and it's really joyful for me to help them and fix them. But what I didn't realize was the fact that this was a really strong dynamic in all of my romantic relationships was actually a sign that there was something not quite balanced within me. Because in a relationship, a healthy relationship, there is a natural give and take around helping and receiving. And I didn't realize that I was actually blocking receiving. I wasn't allowing myself to receive well in relationships, and that was actually more a sign of me and my tendency rather than the dynamic that I was having with these people. So in terms of my history, I found myself in, leapfrogging from relationship to relationship. I'd never be alone, never be able to be on my own, and always find myself in a relationship where there was something lacking, right? I never quite felt good enough, or they were never completely all in. They never had both feet in. There was always something going on with them that would cause them to not be completely available to me. And because I'm a compassionate person, I would understand this and I would help them to try and fix it. So I'm thinking of one relationship in particular with someone who's an alcoholic. And in that dynamic, despite the fact that his alcoholism made the relationship completely impossible, like it was almost as if the relationship didn't exist because this was such a large part of his life. The fact that I was there providing care and attention and empathy and compassion and helping him with strategies and helping him get help, that was what the relationship was all about. It was this complete martyrdom that was going on my end. And my relationships continued to get increasingly more lopsided in that way. I was just naturally drawn to broken men, right? And it wasn't until I actually stopped and looked at the pattern, the origin of the pattern, what was actually going on within me, that I had a really shocking discovery. That trying to fix my emotionally unavailable partner was just simply another distraction for me, like over-consuming self-help material, always obsessing about what's going on in terms of your relationship with him. That was just another distraction from the real issue, and the real issue was what was going on with me, the way that I wasn't able to show up in a vulnerable way, in an intimate way, and really listen to the parts of me that were so aware of these red flags. I had such a stealthy way of pushing them down and just clinging to this identity that I'd created for myself, that this is who I am in relationship. But I was actually stunting my own growth as an individual whilst doing this. And part of the reason why I kept on doing this was because I didn't want to face the real truth, which was that I was choosing emotionally unavailable partners because it meant I didn't have to show up vulnerably and intimately with myself, and I'd never be in the spotlight, so to speak. Now, this simply came from a coping mechanism that I'd learned in childhood with parents that are, to a degree, emotionally unavailable and don't metabolize emotions well. And I just didn't learn that skill of self-intimacy, self-knowledge, and being able to hold space for uncomfortable emotions within me and telling other people about it and receiving help from them. Those kinds of interpersonal skills I just didn't simply learn. But it was like like it grew bigger and bigger inside me, this idea that there's nothing wrong with me, that it's all him. It was almost like I was gaslighting myself into believing that if that person could just change, if that person could just be fixed, then the relationship would be amazing. I had absolutely no awareness that I would need to shift and change and improve as well, because the spotlight was 100% on them all the time. And this is something I talk about a lot on this channel, the fact that if you keep attracting and are attracted to only emotionally available men, that is an indication that to a degree you are emotionally unavailable yourself. Now, the definition of emotionally unavailable is so broad, and I hear a lot of people throw a lot of different things out. But understand that when you try and fix partners and only choose partners that need fixing, it's not giving you an opportunity to connect more deeply with someone, which means you have to show up on a deeper level. So it's a really convenient way of staying emotionally unavailable without actually realizing you're emotionally unavailable as well, because, as I said, the spotlight is 100% on your partner all the time. And it's interesting that emotionally unavailable men that I've come across really like this. You know, it's kind of like they get to have a mom and a partner all in one, right? It's that Florence Nightingale effect that men really feel comfortable and safe when a woman is doing that. And to a large degree, we've been socialized as women to be the caretakers, right? Women that find themselves in relationship with children and their husband is just yet another child. That is one way to do relationship, but unfortunately, there'll be a lot of emotional and intimacy needs that both partners won't have met when they're not stepping up and being their adult, mature self in relationship, taking responsibility for what's going on with them and not letting the relationship enmesh in a way that people are so reliant on each other in that kind of codependent dynamic. Now, shifting the focus again back to you, what I found really interesting about this whole pattern that I had running was that the fact that I had this incredible amount of energy within me that I could put towards helping others, and I was just channeling it into my relationships. I even went to the degree of actually helping my partner start up a business himself, you know, teaching what he knew to help others. And in this kind of weird, distorted way, it was me living out my actual dream and fantasy of having a business, just like the one that I now have. I was living vicariously through him and helping him do it. And I think on a deep level, I was doing that so that I wouldn't ever fail, so that I could safely live out my dreams through another person. And I would never have to grow or shift or change in a way that running a business and having that kind of responsibility really requires you to have. So it's almost kind of like there's this puppet effect, right? Like you're living through your partner, you know, you're trying to change him, trying to get him to heal, in a sense, actually kind of controlling this situation with him, so that you don't have to open up and be vulnerable to the fact that there's stuff about you that needs to shift and change, because you're the one that's actually repeating this pattern again and again. You know, you're the common denominator. And I think that kind of pattern ties into a broader pattern that I had in my life. I've trained as a musician, and I always had this unrealized potential. There was always something holding me back, and there was this part within me that just wouldn't let me really fully try so that I couldn't fail. Like it was a self-protective mechanism, right? If I don't give it my all, then I don't have to feel deep failure in this. And I actually think that that's tied into the pattern that we have around naturally attracting partners that need fixing and require fixing in order to have the relationship work. You know, again, we can put all our energy into what they're doing and not doing, and be in the victim kind of state where if only they would shift and change, you know, things would be so much better. But obviously the answer is we need to take control of what we're doing and make the decisions that are right for us, and be connected and open to our own flaws and our own shortcomings, so that we can actually grow and start to be naturally attracted to healthy partners. So I want to talk about that journey a little bit. For those of you that haven't heard my story, I had a relationship that ended in a really extreme way, and it was kind of a massive slap in the face that forced me to take stock and look at all areas of my life. And I really fell into this kind of heap of realization that I'd been abandoning myself my entire life in all the decisions I'd been making in romantic relationships, in my career, in my friendships. I was so focused on the external, getting validation from my relationships and focusing on them, trying to fix them and doing all those things, that it was almost like I didn't know who I was. I'd just lost my identity. I'd never really fully formed it. Like I didn't know what my opinions were or my preferences or my needs, right? I just completely lacked connection. I was living from the neck up. And some of the earliest work that I did that still lives with me today, which is now a kind of a bit of a seed of what I teach in Heal Your Heart School, are some exercises that get you to really just in everyday moments notice what your preferences are, what you need in the moment. I feel silly to say this, but I would even just ignore the fact that I needed to go to the toilet, right? Like I'd be in this kind of chronic low level fight flight in everyday life that I was just ignoring what my basic needs were, not drinking enough water and not noticing when I needed to rest. I went to a market one day and saw a friend there, and she just got me to lie down, and she placed this beautiful light material over me so that no one else could see me and I was in this bubble, but in a public space. And my body and my nervous system was just able to breathe out and relax in a space where I would normally be quite activated. There's a lot of things going on. There's friends, there's conversation. I was with my parents. And the contrast in my body was really visceral. And I'll never forget it to this day. It really indicates to me the level of chronic dysregulation that I was living with that I thought was completely normal. And of course, the outlet of relationship and trying to fix someone and, being involved with people that are even more dysregulated with me and even more emotionally unavailable than me was a great distraction. I didn't need to look at myself at all. I was always focused on them, and there was kind of like that balance in a sense that they're more unavailable and more dysregulated, and I'm so much better because I'm not as. But if I was to stand side by side with a partner who was really healthy and interested in me, and I did attract men into my life that were healthy as well, but they just didn't register in my awareness at all. They just seemed boring, and there was nothing about them that was grabbing my attention or was attractive to me. And of course, so on this deeper level, when you're with someone like that and you've got this chronic dysregulation and emotional unavailability going on within you, kind of stewing in there, in the space with someone who kind of feels a bit like a blank slate, the only thing that you can really see in that space is your issues. So on a deep level, being around healthy people was too confronting for me. I believe subconsciously, it was something I couldn't handle and had this kind of aversion to, because it was like this mirror effect. They were just mirroring back to me my issues because they were a lot more solid and grounded, and there was really nothing kind of coming off of them, if that makes sense. So I talk about this a lot in my channel around what actually moved the needle for me to become more emotionally available throughout my life. And, I tried everything. I was doing all the programs, watching all the videos, YouTube videos, reading all the books. I tried so many programs and gained a very healthy addiction to self-help material, which in itself became yet another distraction, much like being in a relationship with someone who's emotionally unavailable, right? I got caught up in that whole world, and I could tell you everything that was wrong with me in my head, like I cognitively understood it and I got it, right? Like we're smart, intelligent women on this channel, but that still didn't move the needle. It wasn't until I actually learned the skills to non-verbally feel into my body and feel in with my nervous system and hold space for it and be with it, to notice when it gets triggered, why it gets triggered, what this kind of chronic dysregulation feels like, and what are the nuances around that, and what are the smallest, slowest, tiniest little internal gestures I can do to take the edge off that dysregulation. And whatever that looks like, however that looks like, it would always bring in this really strong part within me that would tell me I shouldn't be relaxing, that I have to keep going. It was this really strong inner critic, or like inner authority figure, that would be telling me that I have to get up stop being lazy, all of that stuff. And of course, that's the voice of authority figures from my life. I had a lot of heavy-handed control in my upbringing and at school, and obviously internalized that so that that dynamic was kind of locked in there, right? Like stopping me from actually feeling and being uncomfortable with the state that I was truly in, this emotionally unavailable state, which is where the contact, the surface of what was living in my body felt incredibly uncomfortable to feel. That authority figure would come in and be like, come on, no, let's keep on going. We don't have time for this, da 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 da. So I had to break through that part within me as well. And honestly, when I work with protector parts with myself and with my clients, there is really only one essence, one emotion that when we contact them with that, they release, they let go, they dissolve. And that emotion really is love and compassion, right? It's really like coming to a state where we understand on a deep level that they think they're keeping us safe, that they think that this is safety, and that they actually are right? In our childhood, in our upbringing, they were incredible. They were our best allies. We were able to, survive in really like emotionally sparse relationships and keep ourselves feeling a level of safety and connection with our caregivers without actually getting those needs met. And so understanding that they knew best then, and they're worthy of our real recognition and appreciation and love, despite the fact that now as adults they keep us disconnected, they keep us emotionally unavailable. They just haven't stepped down from their role yet because they still think they're needed. And the way that they, our protectors, finally realize they're not needed is through trust. And trust happens when you contact them regularly, which I mean, actually coming into an internal dialogue with them, just realizing it's present when that voice comes up and saying, thank you for being here. I understand, why you're saying this. It makes a lot of sense, but this is actually what I need now. I do actually need rest now. Trust me. And when you do then let yourself have what you need, whether that looks like rest or whatever kind of situation it is, and it is actually nourishing for you, that part observes it and sees it and then begins to trust that the decisions you're making are right for the whole, right? The reason these parts get louder and louder is because you keep trying to date emotionally unavailable men, trying to fix them. You're not making the right decisions for yourself in your romantic relationships. And so these parts just gain more and more momentum. And all of a sudden you have this incredibly self-critical dialogue that started when you were young, but it's actually kind of blown up to this huge degree within you. But we've got to form trust with these protectors by starting to make the right decisions for us and starting to come into contact and relationship with them so that they can really actually feel seen and heard and understood, which is, of course, what was lacking for you when you were a child when they first formed. Now, you can work with these protectors by, talking to them, using language, using cognition. I'm not saying that's not helpful, but the thing that actually moved the needle for me, and that works 100% of the time for my clients, is learning the non-verbal internal connection skills to relate to your parts, to your protectors. And it's a completely silent process, and it involves firstly feeling safe in the body, safe in the nervous system. So we can't just kind of go there and start working with them. We actually need to learn a degree of safety. And I remember when I started this work many years ago, I started to feel safe in my body, and it just felt so good that I would actually give myself what I actually truly needed, whether it was a day of bed rot or, multiple baths, spending hours in a hot bath every day, or whatever it looks like what you think is super lazy and what you think is so excessive and selfish and all of that, actually giving that to yourself. And I started to lean into that. What I noticed was that I became incredibly sleepy, incredibly tired. Like it almost felt like chronic tiredness, not chronic fatigue, but there was just this energy in me that was just finally letting go, and my whole body, it was tiring. And I think tiredness, if you're feeling this, if you're at this stage in your life and you know that it's not shut down, it's not freeze, it's not you're not in a dorsal vagal state, which is where you've been so activated and you're in fight flight that you kind of just totally shut down. That's got a different essence to it because it was preceded with a lot of very, very, very stressful times. This kind of relaxation is the body really now starting to feel safe and then just needing more. It was like it just needs more and more and more feelings of safety and relaxation and depth in the body to kind of like combat all of those years that you were in this chronic state and, you know, your body was fighting itself pretty much to just keep moving forward. And it was in those quiet moments of like nothingness, and I'm talking, you know, a number of years being single, right? And not dating men, not going there. Like for me, for a period, it was kind of like a drug. I knew I needed to really detox off of it. It was in those quiet moments of deep silence and nothingness that I actually started to hear my true voice, you know, my real intuition. And I'd heard it before, but it never had the space and safety to actually speak. And it was this part of me that knew instinctively what was right for me. And it wasn't my head, like it wasn't my intellectual saying, this guy's an alcoholic, he's never going to be able to be right for you. Like it wasn't this part. It was actually deep in my gut. You know, it was this kind of resonance within me, like that kind of mama bear feeling of just knowing when something is and isn't right for you. And that was the start of my connection to what I call my true self, or my knowing self, right? That knows in the body, not just in the mind or in the heart, but actually in our seat, that resonates throughout our whole body. And I used to practice connecting to this part, and it's kind of quite esoteric because we're not using the mind at all. Like we're living from the neck down when you're using this skill. And I liken it to, you know, when you see the stars at night and there's a really, really bright star in the sky, but if you look at it straight on, it kind of fades. But if you look at it out of your peripheral, it's really bright. That is the signal from my gut. That is what it is like. If I try and focus on it fully to really kind of like be like, hey, tell me what is going on? Like, what do you think? It doesn't work. It just quietens down. It's like shy. But if I focus on what it is in front of me that I'm trying to make a decision around and allow myself to quiet my mind and just go to the edges of where my awareness is and let that part speak, that part in my body communicates to me without language. It can look like my whole chest and my whole body expanding and I get a little bit taller. Or it can feel like, physical, like tingles running down my back. Or it can look like my nervous system switching into parasympathetic, like a big relax or a big sigh, you know, when you make that decision. So you can start today with these little somatic signals. If you're in a state where you're wanting to develop this internal language with yourself and you know you're making the wrong decisions and you've got a whole lot going on the inside, you've probably got a really strong inner critic and all these other parts, you can start connecting to this part within you by noticing somatic signals in the body. You know, when you entertain two versions of a decision, should I stay with him, should I not, which one feels more expansive in the body? Quieten the mind, shut the mind down. You've been spending way too much time in your mind. Let's focus on actually what your body signals are. And I know if you've done any Reiki, if you've done any using a little pendulum, there are lots of ways we can read our body, but actually just learning the internal signs and the language, the internal language of the body is in my opinion, the quickest. But we've just got to practice it so that we can trust it. And as you do this, what you're going to realize is the energy that you've been using in relationship to fix your partner, to focus on your partner, like all of that energy focused towards him or them is actually very beautiful, sacred energy you have that's just been maladapted to serve the needs of your false self, of your coping mechanisms, of your protective mechanisms. But the source sits in you. It lies in you. And what is testament to that is the fact that I've built this business that I can help hundreds of women around the world, because the energy that I used to put into fixing men and being in those kinds of relationships and trying to make them work, I reclaimed that energy back and I've put that into this business, and it's a successful business. So just think about the energy that you have, the potential energy you have within you. You are the source of it. It doesn't come from him. It doesn't come from anything external. It's something that's sacred and belongs to you. And when you treat it in a way that you acknowledge that it is pure, and we've just been kind of misusing it for now, we can actually reclaim it and make choices, conscious choices about how we use our energy and where we put it into our life to serve us, to serve others. If you're spiritual, to be a conduit for source, that energy is incredibly amazing. And the number of clients that I have that go on to be coaches and to go on and help others instead of spending years of their life stuck in this pattern is uncanny. And I know it's because of this reason. So I would love to help you with this process. This is a very difficult thing to do on your own. You're very welcome to just watch this video, practice those skills and see how you go on your own, but I would love to speak to you. So if you are interested in working with me and chatting more about anything I spoke about today, I would love to speak with you. You can book a free consultation call with me in my calendar link below. And in the meantime, here are some next step videos for you to watch so that you can move one step closer to having a beautiful relationship to yourself, being emotionally available, to healthy future relationships. And for now, I will see you in the next video.